Boy, generosity can be so easy for some and so difficult for others. Welcome back to our series, 30 Things I Have Learned in the Last 10 Years in Photography. I'm Melody, and today I'm exploring a topic that is going to resonate deeply with some of you, both professionally and personally, and that is generosity. We're going to discuss what it means to be generous, why it can be difficult, and how adopting a generous mindset is not just going to transform your business, but your entire approach to life. Now, when we think of generosity, our minds often go to being financially generous or these really big, grand gestures. But really, generosity, I think, is a way of life. I think it is a habit that you can build into your life. And it's about how we share our resources, our time, and ourselves with each other. In food photography, generosity might look like going above and beyond for your clients, or it might look like participating in the community and helping up and coming photographers who are behind you. So generosity looks so different, and there can be so many different ways that we can be generous. But honestly, a lot of us might hesitate to be generous. You might hear some of this and kind of start to squirm because here's the deal. Because when it comes to being generous, we often will have a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset. You know, remember we talked about mindset really shapes our decisions that we make and why and how we make them. And whenever it comes to being generous, a lot of times we hesitate being generous because we feel like there's not enough. If I share business opportunities with them, I'm gonna miss out on business, or I'm gonna be taken advantage of, or it's not gonna be reciprocated, or I'm not gonna get credit for any of the ideas, or you simply don't have enough time to give. And so this scarcity mindset, whenever it comes to being generous, actually ends up creating barriers within communities and barriers with people. All right, I need to put out a disclaimer before I go any further, because whenever I talk about being generous, I do not mean to become a doormat. And I do not mean that you do not need to have boundaries with people, because I do think you need to use wisdom with how and what you give. And so I just wanted to let you know that I do think being generous does not mean you don't have boundaries with people, okay? So I wanted to make sure that I said that, just in case I have people starting to spiral and be like, my gosh, you want me to give anything and everything away? Like, where are the limits? Where do I stop? And I do think you have to use wisdom with how and what you give. So how do we practice this in real terms? How do we become generous if we have those fears that we're going to miss out, or fears that we aren't going to get credit? Because what it comes down to is scarcity mindset, yes, but also pride keeps us from being generous. I know that probably sounds like, okay, Melody, well, she's just dropping some real truth bombs, not holding anything back. And no, I'm not going to hold anything back, because that is what keeps people from being generous. And if you are not generous, you are missing out on a life of abundance, plain and simple. And you are keeping other people from living a life of abundance as well. So how do you be generous? Start small. Generosity is a habit. And my husband and I are very different. I was born generous. It is so easy for me to be generous. When people come and visit my house, they leave with food, they leave with extra cookies, they leave with styling supplies, I just send people home with things. It is just my nature. I can't help it. It's very easy for me to be generous. My husband, on the other hand, it is not easy for him to be generous, and is actually a habit that he has had to build. And now he is very generous, and it makes him feel so good to be generous. And do you know why? Because being generous does the same thing to our brain that celebrating and that exercise does. It releases all of those feel-good hormones. Now, you might hear that and think, well, doesn't that make me selfish for being generous? Because I do it and it makes me feel good. So am I actually generous or am I actually selfish? Stop. If you have that mindset that being generous makes you feel good, therefore you are selfish, you are wrong, okay? Being generous is a good thing, and it's okay that it releases those endorphins in the brain and in the body and the dopamine, because you're motivated to give again and again. It's like our body is wired and designed with our own little reward system. And so we get rewarded for doing good. It is good to be generous. So do not let the fact that it feels good make you feel guilty. Just like get that out, get it out. I've literally had conversations with people that say, I feel guilty for being generous because it makes me feel good. I've literally had conversations. That's why I'm bringing it up. So how can we start small? Well, you can offer help without being asked. We talked about going above and beyond for a client. If you are a part of a community, hopping in, engaging in conversation, giving feedback to people, helping answer questions, sharing opportunities with others. Like, these are just small ways that you can start to build a habit and a lifestyle of generosity. And you know what? A couple of months ago, I had an interview with one of our grads, Kanye, and I love him so much. And I will not forget this interview with him. And he talked about living open-handedly, that being a grad of Pretty Focused and what being a food photographer has allowed him to do. And he talks about where they were and the struggles that they had to where they are now. And he's like, we want to live like this. We want to live open-handedly and be generous with others. And so they are generous with their parents and they're generous with their family. And, being a food photographer has allowed him to be able to do that. But there's also this flip side to generosity that I want to talk about, because for me, like I said, I was born to be generous. Like, this is that's not bragging or anything. I'm just telling you, like, it's easy for me. What's not easy for me is to receive generosity from others. And you might say, well, Melody, isn't it better to give than to receive? Like, so aren't you in a pretty good position? And actually what has happened, whenever I don't receive somebody else's generosity, I hinder their ability to be generous. Like, they have a desire to be generous towards me. And I'm telling you, like, I've told friends, please don't bring me birthday presents. Please, I'm okay. I don't need help. Those simple things have stifled people's generosity in my life. And that actually builds barriers with people. And, I've had friends who are so generous and they will they'll do anything for you. But if you ask them if they need help, no, the answer is always no. And so I've been on that end as well. And I'm always like, man, I just wish I could help. And it has literally kept a barrier there in that friendship because they won't receive help. And I realized that I was doing the same thing. People have offered generosity, offered to bring us meals when we're sick, or offered to help in this way or that way. And usually my answer is, no, I'm good. I'm okay. I don't need help, because I don't want to put them out. That's the thing, is I don't want to put them out. But instead, what's happened is I've actually put barriers up. So there's two folds to being generous, okay? Graciously giving is one of them, but also graciously receiving is another one. And this is how you continue to have a cycle of generosity within communities. This is how you break down barriers with people, and this is how you build and cultivate a life of generosity and communities of generosity. Generosity is a powerful tool, and it can transform lives, and it can transform your business. I really hope that this resonated with you. If it did, leave me a comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.